What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, continuing my deep dive into Deep Purple's live catalog. We're on live release number 3, Made in Europe. Came out in 1976. The material is from April 1975. It represents the Mark III version of the band. Richie's still there. Lord's there. Pace is there. But Glenn Hughes is on bass, Glover's gone, and on vocals occasionally, and then David Coverdale is doing the lead vocals. 5 songs on here. All of them are from the 2 albums that represent the Mark III lineup, Burn and Stormbringer. You get 3 Burn songs, 2 Stormbringer songs, title tracks of each. 3 of the songs are pretty much just straightforward, slightly indulgent. Blackmore getting a chance to just show off always. Mistreated is extended pretty nicely, where Blackmore gets a chance to kind of solo a little more length. David Coverdale gets a chance to go off vocally as they throw a little B.B. King Rock Me Baby cover in there towards the end of that. And then the one completely indulgent, to its detriment, I'm going to argue, performance on here is Burns' You Fool No One, which on the studio album is probably just 4.5, 5 minutes of percussion-driven, slightly funky, kind of reminds me of late 60s, almost psych vocally, kind of reminds me, I think it's a Cream song that it reminds me of, the first part of the vocals. Fantastic guitar solo on that is kind of funky and kind of groovy, and Blackmore's completely in the pocket. Here they extend it unnecessarily in the beginning, in the middle, in the end. There's a drum solo. They take a 5-minute song and make it 3 times longer. Still some really fantastic moments in it. But personally, I maybe would have preferred different songs instead of this. Drop this one and give us maybe some older stuff. I respect the fact that there's none of the older stuff is on here, that this are just the songs that represent the Mark III lineup. That's cool. They're not leaning on previous successes. But I do think You Fool No One, as great as the actual song is, the 5 minutes of the actual song that's buried in the 16.5 minutes sounds fantastic. I think Pace sounds better here than he does on the studio version. But it's just I don't need the drum solo. There's a Lord organ solo thing in the beginning where he quotes Hava Nagila. I don't need that. Richie gets a part where they break it down and Richie gets to extend out. I'm okay with that. It's Blackmore. But an interesting album. Interesting little live album. Called Made in Europe, I think specifically to capitalize on the Made in Japan connection, because that was a surprisingly successful album, though I don't think any of the band members actually liked it. 45 minutes long. You get, and it is slightly out of order. That's another thing that bothers me, is when bands, now they've done this twice, Deep Purple will rearrange the songs in order to fit the release. The order of the songs on here are Burn, Mistreated, Lady Double Dealer on side A. Side B is You Fool No One, Stormbringer. The actual performances, I think all the Europe performances, it was Burn and then Stormbringer were the 1-2 punch that open it. I think that works really well, especially because they stretch out Burn a little bit. They come in with a 30-second, end of the song type flurry, all dramatic to start the show. Then they drop, and Richie does 20 seconds of licks before somebody goes rock and roll. And then all of a sudden it's no. We're right into that Burn riff, and the song just slays. The band sounds great. The Glenn Hughes' bass, I think purposefully higher in the mix than Glover, because that's who Glenn Hughes is as a bassist. A little bit funkier, a little bit of a showman, a little bit more pop to what he does. I think it works really well. But the Burn is just, it's a blistering version of Burn. Really kind of funky vibe in the middle that they lean into, kind of bring it down a little so Blackmore can show off, finish strong, nice and playful. Fantastic opener. On the album, they go into Mistreated next, which is, I would say, probably the highlight of the show, highlight of the set, at least, a highlight of the release, I mean. I wish they had put Stormbringer next. I think the sort of Mistreated is like close to 12 minutes long. I think the sort of boiled down direct nastiness of the Stormbringer, which is pretty much played straight. I think that would have worked better had they gone Burn, Stormbringer, and then Mistreated. And it still fits on the side. You have some extra audience noise at the end of Stormbringer. You can just cut off. I think it'll fit on side A. It's like a less than a minute difference. But instead they give you Mistreated, which is fantastic. You get 40 seconds of Blackmore doing some blues opening stuff before he gets into the main riff. And that main riff is nasty. Blackmore is feeling this. It sounds good. The song is good. The bass is very up front in the mix. Coverdale sounds fantastic. Yeah, just absolutely, absolutely awesome. We bring it down again so it gets quiet in the middle. A nice dramatic conclusion at the end. They go into Rock Me Baby. The right when Coverdale's doing like his song ending like vocal theatrics to what sound like the end of the song. He starts singing Rock Me Baby, and then they go into a full band version of that. That's absolutely fantastic. It's just great. Just an absolutely really powerful 12 minutes of music. And nothing really on the rest of the release lives up to this 1-2 punch, which is why I kind of wish they had put Stormbringer in the middle, give the side A more of a balance. But instead, Lady Double Dealer follows. Pretty straightforward version, good energy. It's just pretty much straight hard rock. The Blackmore solo, the Lord solos, which are both relatively short, are both fun. And that's side A. Side B opens up with You Fool No One. You get a Lord intro with the Hava Nagila, him messing around. Then the drums kick in, which are absolutely fantastic. And before the actual song kicks in, like the drums kick in, the bass is kind of playful. Richie's got some licks he's doing. Then we drop into the song proper, which sounds fantastic. Reminds me of a Cream song. The first part of the vocals. We go into Richie's solo. He essentially takes the full-length solo that he does on the album, and then he kind of goes off and extends it a little bit. We get a little more playful energy here where they're a little indulgent and like, hey, let's give our soloist some. We go back into the song, and then we drop off into a drum solo for quite a while. And then at the end of the drum solo, we go back into the song to finish it out. So we get pretty much a bonus 10 minutes of like Lord doing stuff in the beginning, Richie indulging in the middle, Pace getting the solo towards the end, and then the song just kind of islands of the song that tie those parts together. Yeah, I don't know if I need the drum solo. I like the rest of it, but I don't know. It's the actual song sounds fantastic. And then we close out with a pretty straightforward, high energy, strong version of Stormbringer. So yeah, it's an interesting little live release. Two of the shows, and I think these are from shows in like April of 75. Two of the shows have since been released in full, though one of them does not have the drum solo. And I will eventually get to those much later in time when we get to those chronological releases. But I almost think they would have been better off at this point, maybe releasing a double album again, though I respect the decision to just feature the Mark II lineup or the Mark III lineup and not, only do songs that they brought, to the studio and helped release. But I enjoy the release. I mean, I'm a huge Deep Purple fan. I think the versions of Burn and Mistreated kind of almost make it somewhat essential, even though when we get to the later full releases, maybe that cancels it out. But so far, like if I was alive in 76, I was alive in 76. But if I was buying Deep Purple albums in 76, I probably would have enjoyed this a little bit, a lot. So yeah, but it's a good lesson. It's just, at this point, we're comparing everything to Made in Japan, which is, I would argue, one of the top 5 live albums, arguably, of the 70s. So interesting release, but I like it. Where would I rank this among the other two I've done? It's a number 2. I think it's You know, the Concerto for Group and Orchestra is an interesting album, and the band parts on there are just amazing. I don't know how much I want to revisit the orchestra part, and Made in Japan is just perfect. So it's hard to like see what's going to be made in Japan, though something might. So yeah, have it at number two, Made in Europe. It's an interesting release. Some good performances. I think the complaints to be made are what was chosen to be on here, particularly the full version of You Fool No One. But you cannot fault the performances. You cannot fault the energy. I think the sound is pretty decent. No complaints about the sound. Yeah, I enjoy this as a hardcore Deep Purple fan. So that's all I got for this. Let me know your thoughts on this album, on Deep Purple, on all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. At least for the first two songs. At least for The Burn and The Mistreated, because they're pretty fantastic. All right. Thanks for watching. Next one's a Bolin album. I'm excited about that. All right. That's all we got. Peace. Talk to you later.